Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast, episode number 30. This is our third Ask a Black Belt segment. So this is our Q&A.
Asking black belts questions. Is that our new song? Nah.
No,
I don't like it. Wasn't great. I'll get back to you. I'll get a better one.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah. Or we could go with, we didn't talk about it much. Last episode, we had our first guest, which was cool.
Yeah, it was great. If you haven't listened to that episode, you definitely should. Episode number 29.
Yeah, we had JT on, James Tomlinson. Tenacity has multiple names, so he can steer clear of the feds. But yeah, we only briefly mentioned we didn't go into his bloody rap hip hop video.
No, we didn't.
You did a little sort of dig at it.
I did talk about it, but I didn't poke the bear. But anyway, now that it's not here,
I'll hit him up to help me with a little jingle.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And if you want to hear the rap video we're talking about, I didn't actually tell everyone where to find it, but I'll put it in. I would have put it in the show notes on the previous episode. But if you go onto YouTube and type Jiu Jitsu rap music video, you will find the first hit is JT's Jiu Jitsu rap video.
It's super funny because I remember when he did that 8 years ago, and in 3 years ago, and in the video, right at the start, it's filmed in a way that makes it look like he's getting out of or that this, I think it's a Land Rover or Range Rover or, one of those nice SUV cars is his, right? Classic rap hip hop video. You got the nice car. And I remember him telling me, he was like, dude, that was just some car parked on the street.
That's how they do it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. No, but it's actually really well produced.
It's not bad. Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's definitely worth a listen. I would get onto it. But okay, so this is our third Q&A. If you're unfamiliar with the Q&A, if you want to submit a question to the show, you can do so over at our Instagram. This is called Ask a Black Belt, but you can also submit questions to me. I'm have nutrition qualification and I'm a PT, being a white belt. Kieren here, and Adam is the black belt.
For those that don't know, yeah.
Everyone fucking knows, man. Shut up. All right. Okay, so question 1 is submitted by a blue belt that trains at Alliance, Sophia. And Sophia asks, do you have any advice for girls when training with aggressive partners? So what I believe she's talking about there is training with aggressive, potentially male partners or partners that are substantially bigger than she is.
So it's a great question, and I knew about this question before recording, and so I've put a lot of thought into it. And
it's not like you.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to come to some type of answer that didn't say, well, it depends, but I really struggled to come to that conclusion, and I'll tell you why. It's because you it's a fine line, and it will depend on the approach of the particular girl. And what I mean by that is I've trained with multiple girls over the years, and they, to be very simplistic, they tend to fall into one of two categories, right? You either have, I'm talking as a guy here training with girls, you either train with girls who appreciate the fact that you kind of train a bit lighter with them because there's usually a weight difference and a strength difference, and they appreciate that, you roll gently and appropriately with them, right? And then there's other girls who actually find that super offensive, that it's kind of like you're not respecting their level of jiu-jitsu, or, that they're not good enough to handle you at their best, which a lot of girls are, right? And I'm sure any white or blue belt who's trained with a higher belt female would tell you that, the chicks can beat the crap out of you in jiu-jitsu, right? So, I've trained with girls who will literally say to you, or have said to me, no, just roll with me like I'm a dude. Don't, just roll normally with me. So in that regard, it's going to depend, okay? If you're in the column A girl and you kind of want guys to roll with you in little air quotes, appropriately, right? Gently or whatever, and you're rolling with a typically aggressive training partner, well, then that's a problem with that particular training partner, right? That's not your problem, as in you, the female, aren't doing anything wrong. That's the other dude acting inappropriately. And, you know, he may not be doing it intentionally because he might be of a mindset where, you know, you don't know. Maybe that guy has had every single girl he's ever trained with previously say to him, no, dude, like it's disrespectful for you to roll light with me, roll properly with me, right? For all we know. So he might just be assuming that's the norm. So if you're one of the girls who wants the bigger, heavier, stronger dude to roll with you a bit, you know, gentler, then you need to make them aware of it. And if they still don't act appropriately, then you've got to talk to your instructor, right? Because that could be just a problem with the way that that student is interacting with the other student. Jiu-Jitsu is open to everyone. And if you're just in a generic class, then you have to behave appropriately. It's a bit different if you're talking about competition training and stuff. There's, in my opinion, less wiggle room in competition training. It is a little bit more like, well, dude, you stepped into the lion's den, right? So if you're the girl who prefers the gentler role with the guys, okay, you need to make that partner aware of it. You know, just tell them. Or if you maybe feel shy to tell them, or maybe you tell them but they don't give a shit, then you got to talk to your instructor. And a good instructor will then talk to that student.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Because I think every student's feelings and opinion is valid.
Yeah.
If, on the other hand, you're the column B girl, where you kind of find it offensive that guys don't train with you properly. And if anyone's listening thinking that never happens, man, like 99% of the girls I trained with in Brazil would find it incredibly offensive if you didn't roll with them properly, right? They would hate it. Okay. They would find it super disrespectful. So if you're one of those girls, well, then you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? I mean, you then got to cop it, right? The same way that us as dudes, some partners are more aggressive than others. And this, you know, I had partners in Brazil that anytime I'd be partnered with them, their style was just super aggressive.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh man, I don't want to go with so-and-so.
I feel like I'm definitely in that camp. I feel like
you have a more aggressive style,
way more
right?
aggressive,
which is
like
fine.
Heavy top pressure. Like I, you know, get my shoulder right into people's face. Like, you know, as you showed me, cup their face into my neck so they can't breathe. That's my approach. So
which is a great approach to have.
Yeah, this
dude,
hits
like
home a little bit.
we rolled yesterday, and you super aggressively went for a cross collar choke on me. You know, which was great.
Was that even close? I didn't even ask. I don't think it was.
No, it wasn't.
I don't think the second hand was in.
Yeah, it wasn't deep enough, and like you didn't have my posture control. But I mean, like the attack was aggressive, and that's fine. I think having an aggressive style in jiu-jitsu from a competitive point of view is a massive strength. So if you're a girl who wants, you know, for lack of a better term, wants to be like, because man, you kind of can't win, right? Like, because it's, for me, it's like the perfect expression is you can't have your cake and eat it too. You know, you can't be standing there saying, oh, you know, like girls and guys are all equal and everything, blah, 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 except when I want a girls only jiu-jitsu class and when I want you to roll with me like I'm a girl. It's like, well, you know, like you're kind of making everyone walk on eggshells. You know? And this is, for me, like I said, I'm coming from a place where, you know, I got verbally chewed out by girls when I rolled with them lightly. They were like, dude, what the, you know, like they found it so disrespectful. Right.
See, I've always defaulted to roll light,
and I still to today.
That's my
default to that. Right. But I mean, also myself. I mean, I'm close to the, you know, to 100 kilos. So there's not many girls that are close to my weight. But as we've mentioned before, I used to train every day with Gabby Garcia, who, I mean, she's super
renowned for being a solid chick.
Yeah, I mean, she's super lean and shredded now, so she's probably a bit lighter than me now. But I mean, we used to weigh the same, and man, we rolled like, you know, man, super hard.
Yeah.
Right. And there's girls lighter than Gabby who could beat me as well back when I was a blue belt or purple belt or whatever. So I think I do default to that too. But yeah, I mean, if you're a competitive girl, as in like you do competitions and you want to do comp training and all this stuff, man, like, yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're in there and you want to be rolled with properly, sometimes you have more aggressive training partners than others. Right. And yeah, you've got to, are you column A or column B?
Yeah.
Right? I think if you're column B, you've just got to suck it up, or maybe, you might have to avoid certain people. Like I said, even for myself, I had times I was like, man, I'm not psyched, or I'm not emotionally ready to roll with so-and-so.
Yeah.
He's just so aggressive.
I got a question on the back of this. Is it okay to say no to a training partner?
I think that goes back into how sometimes we've spoken about the unspoken rules of etiquette and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's going to depend on the gym. If it's a gym that's super old school etiquette, well, if they're a higher belt than you, then no, you're not.
What if we're talking peer to peer? So say I'm a white belt and I'm ducking one of the other white belts.
If you're in comp training, then no, you can't, right?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, if you're not ready to train like a competitor,
Yeah.
and then you say no to someone, man, you're harming his training.
Yeah.
He's turned up to prepare for comps,
Yeah.
and now you're being like, oh no, I don't want to roll.
Only want easier rolls or whatever. Yeah.
Well, then you're in the wrong class.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe if it's just a generic class, you might be able to get away with it. Yeah, it's gonna depend on the gym and the kind of school your instructor runs.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan for turning down roles. I don't. It's different if it's an open mat, right? But if you're in class, it's like, well, man, you don't have a partner, I don't have a partner, let's roll.
Yeah.
In saying that, sometimes you have those dudes that, despite maybe they're so pure at heart and they have all your best interests at heart, but sometimes they're those dudes it's like, oh, you injure me every time. Like, I just don't want to roll with you because you always injure me. I'd make up some excuse, but that's just like self-preservation.
Is it okay to say to someone, like, say you're someone like Sophia, or maybe you're like a lighter guy, maybe you're like 70 kilos and you got that 100-kilo dude that always like messes you up. And you are preparing for a comp, maybe it is a comp class, and they ask to roll with you, and you say something along the lines of, "Oh, sorry, not today. I'm looking to roll with people closer to my weight."
Yeah,
is that okay?
Yeah, I've had that. Yeah, that's a bit more common you see in comp rolls. Yeah, like and conversely, I'll do that the other way around.
Yeah,
I'll tell
likewise.
I'll avoid rolling with someone will ask to roll with me and they'll be too light for me. And I'll be like, oh no, man, I just want to roll with someone heavier. That's not to say you can't gain anything from rolling with other weights, but yeah, you might maybe you're specifically looking for people closer to your weight.
Yeah, maybe you're like 2 weeks out or something along those lines.
Yeah, so I think that's fine.
Okay, cool. All right.
So yeah, you're either column A or column B. If you're column A, talk to the person or the instructor. If you're column B, yeah, can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. Awesome. So question number 2 comes from Harry. Harry's a white belt. And Harry asks, how should gyms handle reopening post-lockdown? For context, I mean, everyone that listens to this podcast should be aware by this point, but we are in Sydney and we have just come out of lockdown. So that by the time this airs, we'd been training for about 3 weeks at this point.
Yeah. Well, not all gyms, right? I mean,
Yes,
don't want
that's
to go into the political side of it, but some gyms have remained closed for whatever reason. But most gyms have opened; they just have to follow a few certain protocols. To answer Harry's question, I'm just kind of going to give a very generic answer to this. I think in terms of how you should handle it from a business point of view, for me, and I'm just following the guidelines that have been given to me. At the end of the day, I'm a small business trying to run a gym. I've been given the green light to open as long as I follow these certain rules. I'm just following those rules, right?
Yeah.
And I can open. I mean, for me, it's as black and white as that, okay? Without going into the politics of stuff, how should you handle reopening post-lockdown? The thing that I am super passionate about making sure you do post-lockdown is that you really advise your students of the effects that have taken, like what's happened to their body after 3 months of no training, right? Like you would know this, Kieren, because you've been to class since we reopened. I said to everyone, guys, don't take, the body's an amazing thing. It adapts super quickly. So don't take for granted how quickly your body adapted to not training jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just jump back in the deep end. obviously I never want my students to get hurt, but if you come back in post lockdown and you just try to train like you did before lockdown, that's when you may get injured. But even without an injury, that's when you might leave the gym being like, oh man, I got stacked so hard, my neck. Oh, it's not an injury, but you'll be like, that sore neck for
It's a bit of a kink or something.
2 or 3 days, or like, oh man, my shoulder, whoa, that's going to be sore tomorrow. And it's unnecessary, right? Even myself, as we're recording this, I've trained the last 2 days in a row. The first Monday and Tuesday I've trained, because the gym just opened. And even I'm sore, right? I've gone from doing jiu-jitsu every single day of the week to not doing it for 3 months, because even though I stayed active and everything through lockdown, it's not the same as having a gym open where I'm teaching and training multiple classes a day every day. Man, all I did was do a relatively light session on Monday and Tuesday. And, last night you were there, Kieren. It felt like a hard session, but if you looked at the minutes of rounds we did, was like nothing, right?
Yeah.
But all of us were dead at the end.
Yeah, I was fried.
So,
but one thing I will say from this experience coming back after 3 months off, there's a lot of squishy blue belts rolling around.
You mean like squishies in pudgy?
Yeah, ripe for the taking. I've been having a blast.
Yeah.
Huge call out.
Yeah. So, there's obviously other things. I could talk a lot about post-lockdown things that the business should do, like, contacting your members and all this sort of stuff. What should you do about memberships and all that? But I mean, that's a
different conversation, I suppose.
I don't think that's what Harry was asking.
Yeah.
But if you dealt with lockdown correctly, you would have stayed engaged with your members through lockdown. But without talking about the political side of lockdown and all the requirements and vaccines and all that stuff, I think it's very important that you as a student and gyms and the gym owners and instructors should be making sure that their students don't come in and do that one Monday class and then need a week off.
Yeah. And I suppose you can apply this advice to if you've taken a break, maybe you've gone on a holiday for a month or something, because a month is a long time not to train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like jiu-jitsu is pretty hectic in terms of its cardio and mobility, strength output required. It's not like going for a jog or something like that. So I think that's sound advice, regardless for why you took time off.
Yeah. Like I used to use a metric that was, whatever amount of time I took off, I needed twice that amount of time to get back to where I was.
Yeah.
If I took a month off, I needed 2 months to get back to where I was before I had that time off.
That makes sense.
Right. And I mean, obviously that's just a very generic metric. Everyone's going to be different, but so
we've got 6 months. Let's go.
yeah, I know, right?
Okay, so next question is from Dan. Dan is a blue belt. Dan trains at our gym, and he asks, have you ever had any unwanted erections during a roll?
That's, I know Dan quite well. There's probably a few people listening and chuckling to that question, but I'm actually surprised Dan sent that in. I've known Dan for quite a while, and he's coming from a legitimate question. Dan has suffered for a long time from quite severe ED, right?
Yeah.
Erectile dysfunction. And he's recently gone on some new treatment or medication, right? I'm not a doctor. So it's a legit concern, right? I have no idea how like Viagra and all that stuff works, right?
Yeah.
But, it's a legit concern. And yeah, I'm surprised he's a bit more open about it now than he was.
Yeah, I'm surprised he submitted
previously.
it as well.
But obviously he's concerned that something awkward could happen during a roll. In short, it's never happened to me, and I've never seen it happen to anyone.
Yeah.
I'm sure Dan would agree. Like when you're rolling and one of the things that people love about jiu-jitsu is when you're rolling and getting choked, or even not getting choked, but you're rolling, like it's impossible to think about anything else.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? That's why people love it as a tool to relieve stress or a hard day's work. Because when you're in a roll, man, like
It's the last thing you're thinking about.
Yeah,
and that's an interesting perception for people that don't train jiu-jitsu. Like my friend Zach, who has done a bit of jiu-jitsu, his wife says, isn't it just like sex but with clothes on? Because that's like a perception from the general public, because you're grappling, you're very, it seems like it may be intimate or personal with someone, but it's just not.
Yeah, it's not
even
like
close.
Like one of the things that is like, you know, like let's say this, for example, I mean, this will be a silly example, but anyone who trains is going to agree with me. If all of a sudden, like, I don't know, like you and I are just hanging out and for whatever reason, I touched your butt, that would be weird. But if we're rolling and I reach up and I'm trying to berimbolo and I grab your drawstring and my fingers are pretty much going down your butt crack and your pants start falling off, like for some reason, like it's not weird at all. Like it's like what the last thing you're thinking about is anything sexual or awkward. Like, and I think it's because, you know, people who train jiu-jitsu, like, you know, it's real. It's not a little air quotes fake martial art. Like you're literally grappling and wrestling.
Your arm could be broken.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in Dan's case, I know he's a bit concerned about his medical condition. But my advice to Dan would be, if that does happen, just politely excuse yourself and, you know, return when you're ready.
And if it did happen, I would argue that it's not a jiu-jitsu thing. It's probably a medication or dosage thing. I don't really know, but
anyway, wishing Dan all the best in his new procedures and treatments. But
he'll be sweet.
He'll be all right. Okay, question 4 comes from Richard, and Richard asks a really interesting one that I'm curious to hear the answer to as well. Richard asks, "What's with the gauntlet on promotion to colored belts?" So for those that don't know, the gauntlet is tradition, I would say, of you need to effectively walk through a line of people where they slap you with their belt on your back. So imagine you're walking through like a tunnel
like
of people.
A corridor of people.
Corridor of people on each side, and they're whacking the shit out of you with their belts. What's with that, Adam?
Yeah, so the gauntlet. I've been on both sides of it. All sides of it, right? Like I've been whipped by belts, I've done the whipping, and I've also now on the side of it where we don't do the gauntlet at our gym. So to give a bit of history on the gauntlet, it's kind of one of those things that no one really knows where it started. If you talk to Fabio, my coach, you know, he won't say he started it, but he's kind of like, I don't really know who started it, but we kind of just started doing it in the gym for whatever reason. Because, well, I mean, not for whatever reason, because back then it was a bunch of friends training together. So, I mean, the same way that guys do stupid stuff at school, like let's play, I don't know what they call that game, but you punch each other in the arm, to see who taps out first.
I played that game.
You know,
it's
just
so
like
fucking dumb.
Just stupid games. Or I used to play a game with my friends at school. You would spin a 20-cent piece, like a coin on the table, and you'd have to keep flicking it.
Yeah.
And then if whoever knocked it over would then get the coin slammed into their knuckles, like dumb stuff,
and
right?
Have you played knuckles as well, where you got to like hit each other on the knuckles?
Yeah,
and like
right?
you got to like dodge it.
Yeah, it's
slaps
like the slaps, but knuckles is worse, right?
That knuckle way worse. Fucked up my hand doing that.
So yeah, they started doing it, and Fabio actually calls it one of his biggest regrets was starting the gauntlet. It is so unnecessary, and I don't want to say the word barbaric, but it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, let's say, you're changing belts, right? And you've done all this work to get your new belt, but the last thing standing in between you and getting your blue belt is you getting like whipped by everyone else. You've got to show that you're tough enough to take a whipping, to take this unnecessary physical abuse to earn your belt. Man, anyone who advocates for the gauntlet, I say this to them. You would have already done your time and earned your belt through the months, years of training to get to that point. The last thing you need is some trivial belt whipping to prove that you're deserving of that belt. If you think that's the case, then give me one round with you and I will roll with you to a point where you'll be begging for the gauntlet, right? Like I can roll, like I'm not saying that as in like I know that probably sounded like I'm a big tough guy. Like I'm just trying to make the point that like your training should be hard enough. Like the gauntlet is so unnecessary, right? You should be having roles that are like you're proving yourself through your jujitsu, not through, whether you can take a whipping, right? And so Fabio, we used to do it at his gym, and it was quite brutal because you would you would have the corridor, and if you got your blue belt, you would go up and back. If you got your purple belt, you would go up, back, and if you got your brown, you go up, back, up, back, up, back. And the black belts would stand at the ends. So when you were just walking through the corridor, the people in the middle just kind of got one swipe at you, but the black belts would stand at the ends. So as you would like get up to the end and be turning around to go back down, they would just like hammer you multiple times, bro. And
it seems like a frat party or like a frat initiation sort of thing.
And it's just stupid. Like it's,
I think it seems to be the benefit of those doing the whipping, not the actual student. It's not for the student.
It's like this. Yeah, it's like kind of like a hazing thing. It's that, never-ending cycle of, well, people abused me when I got my belt, so now the payoff is that I get to abuse someone else. It's like, well, no, man, like that's not how it works. And one of the reasons that it's kind of the final straw for Fabio, even when Fabio did the gauntlet, at least in my time with him, like Fabio didn't partake in it, right? Like he didn't whip anyone or anything. I could already tell that it wasn't really his thing, but the final straw was when like a mum saw one of her kids, not kid's kid, it was like a teenager or late teens or whatever, get whipped, and she almost sued him.
Wow.
Because it was just like it's literally abuse, man.
Yeah.
When you see it, if you've never seen a full like Brazilian style gauntlet, and dudes have, you think paintball bruises are bad? Man, like so bad. And it's at the end of class. People's belts are usually wet from sweat as well.
It just seems ridiculous that.
Yeah, it's so stupid, and I think any gyms who still do it are super outdated. It's,
I know there are some gyms that do it.
You can have roles with your students that are, especially if you're talking about lower belts, like a white belt getting their blue belt. If you're, I'm not saying you have to be the best black belt in the world, but you would assume the average black belt can demolish the average white belt. So if you've got a white belt getting a blue belt, you should be able to make roles with that white belt way more insufferable than a gauntlet. And I would prefer my student to show how much grit they've got through a role than through just getting whipped. It's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. So hopefully that sheds some light on the gauntlet for Richard there. Now we do have another question that is a bit niche to your expertise, not only as a black belt, but as a gym owner as well. So this one comes from Hamza, and he is a brown belt that is opening a new gym in the northeastern suburbs of Melbourne called Focus Jiu Jitsu. So shout out to Hamza and shout out to Focus Jiu Jitsu. And he asks, do you have any tips for opening a gym and advice on attracting the first 20 core members of the gym?
Yeah, it's a good question, because if you already come from a status symbol, it's very easy, right?
What do you mean by status symbol?
Well, like if you're already a name in jiu-jitsu, you can just open a gym and people turn up.
Right.
People leave their current gyms to come train with you.
Like the B team in Austin.
Exactly, right? Like there would have been people who left, not everyone, right? Because some people, they don't care about who's who, or some people are super loyal to their gym or team, but 100% there would have been people who left their current gyms to go train with Craig and Nicky Ryan and Enrod and that. Whoops. Sorry, knocked the bottle over. So yeah, unless you're already a famous person in the jiu-jitsu community, you're not going to have that, influx of instantly day one a bunch of members, right? So the best way to do it is you need to make some type of connection in your community, right? So whether that's the jiu-jitsu scene in your area is obviously valuable, right? So throughout the years having done, because you would assume that you're not just like a random person opening a gym, right? You're a brown belt, so you've been training for X amount of time, hopefully in the area, so you've competed and stuff. So you at least have connections. Okay, you may not be someone in jiu-jitsu in terms of a status symbol, but you know people in the jiu-jitsu community. So that's valuable, right? Making connections in your community. What do I mean by community? So other gyms, not necessarily jiu-jitsu gyms, but making connections with other like fitness gyms or CrossFit gyms, other similar interested businesses like supplement shops, right? And then, of course, super important to make connections with schools. Some people don't want to hear this, but unless you're Lucas Lepre opening a gym, you need to teach kids classes from just a small business point of view, especially talking to someone who's opening a gym here in Australia. Man, like kids are just such a valuable revenue stream for your business. And I mean, even Lucas Lepre's gym, he teaches kids. I know and even Lucas himself teaches the kids class sometimes, right? So making those connections in your community go a long way, right? After that, I mean, I hate to admit it, but you've just got to be all over social media. Everyone knows nowadays it's really the best marketing tool. So you've got to have your Instagram, you've got to have your, whether it's a Twitter or a TikTok or something, and you've got to try to be relevant on your social media and have a open date so you know when you're opening, so you can tell people you're opening, right? And start getting pre-registrations. I mean, I went through the same thing. When I opened my gym, I was pretty much the exact same situation. I knew people in the jiu-jitsu scene in Sydney, right? But I'm not a big famous person. I wasn't going to have a massive influx of people. So I had a date that we were opening, and, you know, we had like an online form where they could submit put in their details to receive more information about the gym. Mm-hmm. So they're already leads, right? It's hard to get people to pre-sign up unless they're people you personally know, mm-hmm. right? Coming from a place of not being a famous person, you're not really going to get pre-sign-ups, I don't think. I mean, maybe if you invested a lot in a marketing strategy, like if you hired someone to do the marketing for you, maybe, right? That might pay off. But if you're just doing it all yourself, I doubt you're really going to get pre-sign-ups, but you can at least get those leads, right? People who are going to put in their email, say, you know, to find out more information. And I mean, I got people putting in their email that live 2 hours drive away. Of course, they were never then going to come train with me, right? But you're starting to get leads, right? And then before I opened, I just did like an open mat sort of thing. So I welcomed everyone. So people who trained at other gyms and were never going to leave their gym to come train with me, but I knew them through the jiu-jitsu community, they came, and maybe they brought a friend of theirs who doesn't train yet, but lives really close to my gym. And then they came to that little open mat, like soft opening, grand opening or whatever, right?
So word of mouth sort of networking.
Yeah, I'm not a marketer, but I believe, especially in jiu-jitsu, your strongest tool is your reputation. The downside of that is it takes a long time to develop, right? And a lot of it is through word of mouth, okay? But that would be my overall advice in attracting the first 20 members. The other thing I'll answer about that question is, it seems very obvious, but I can't stress enough how important it is to really, really understand from a business point of view, all your overheads before you go in and open the gym. And lots of people just think, they go, oh man, okay, so rent is this much and I'm charging whatever it is, like $50 a week. So, if I have 10 members, I'm getting 500, you know, all those numbers check out. Man, it's not that simple, right? Yeah. Like you've got rent, you've got your electricity, if you've got gas for your hot water, you've got public liability insurance, you've got software, you've got, you know, even little things you don't realize in a small business, uniforms, right? Which aren't, you know, it can be months that you get that return on investment because you've got to stock the uniforms. Little things that you don't realize, you know, if you're just like, oh, I need like mop and cleaning stuff to clean the mats, and okay, you've just spent whatever it is, $60 on buying like a good mop and a bucket and all this stuff, like
It all adds up.
it all adds up, man. Like you realize like, oh man, that dude cut himself. Oh, I don't have a first aid kit, like it all adds up, man.
Yeah, belts and everything, like
everything, even the stripes to put on people's belts.
Yep.
Like when that runs out and I go to the chemist to buy more tape, I'll be like, I'll spend like $40 in tape, which okay, $40 isn't a huge amount of money, but you're like, it's just tape to put stripes on belts, right?
You add that to the 60 for the cleaning products, and you add that to the drinks, or you add that to the uniforms and every little thing. And that's with business, a lot of small businesses like yours in general. But I think if you're starting a business for the first time, that's the first thing.
Yeah, especially if you're going the average jiu-jitsu owner, they usually don't come from a place of like having an MBA in business, right? Like they usually what they're a professional at is jiu-jitsu or teaching jiu-jitsu. So they usually don't come from a place of being super business savvy or, so some things that may be obvious to some aren't to others. But yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is to, like, when I say your overheads, I mean everything, man. It adds up. You'd be surprised. It's not as simple as saying, well, I pay $1,000 a week rent. I got 20 members paying $50 a week. Okay, so I'm breaking even. Nah, man, you wouldn't be breaking even, right?
Yeah.
So to summarize, make sure you understand your overheads and everything. That's super important. And yeah, get on your social media and network in your community, right? To start getting people to register their email, to find out more information, and then start with some sort of open mat that makes it welcome to everyone, because they might bring people who you won't convert that person that because they train at such and such gym, but they might bring a friend who might train at your gym, right? And that happened to me. There were people who the only reason they didn't train with their friend is because their friend's gym was too far away. But turns out my gym is right next to where this dude lives. Right. So, another mistake, I know I was just summarizing, but this is big. Another mistake that jiu-jitsu gym owners do is that they think that their target customer, their target consumer are people who already train jiu-jitsu. No, man. They already train, and they already train somewhere else. It is, if you're talking about how much it costs for customer acquisition, if you're trying to acquire customers who already train somewhere else, think about how much money in acquisition it's going to cost you to make them leave their team and convert to your team, right? Like, that's so much work. Man, your target audience are people who don't train jiu-jitsu yet. Right. I can tell you from experience, and from experience having managed alliance gyms all around the world, people don't leave their gym to train at your gym, like, unless you're a massive name. Right?
Yeah, I can't think of why I would. I was just trying to put myself in the shoes of someone to leave. I know. I'm in a little bit of a different position.
I know, but I mean, just even as a thought experiment, like, let's say hypothetically a gym opened across the road from my gym, like, I can't think, like, what would be a reason that if it's cost the same price and it's the same facilities and everything, what could be the reason that would make you leave and train at that gym? Like, the only one could be, oh man, like
John Danaher was there.
It's John Danaher's new gym or something, right? Like,
I'd visit.
Yeah. So yeah, don't target people who already train. But like I said, that open mat, you can be targeting the people who don't train potentially through someone who already does, like a mutual connection.
What do you think of people that did leave their gyms in Austin to train at B Team? Maybe they are purple belt or blue belt or something, and they've been in the gym for like 2 years to leave and join Craig Jones when they're not trying to be the world champion.
Yeah. It's interesting you finished that thought with that.
Yes.
Because I think there's 3 ways that it could happen. Either A, it's because that they are a student who, man, that like they want jiu-jitsu to be their life and they want to become a world champion, and maybe they love the gym that they're at, but man, all of a sudden they've got an opportunity to train with
the best,
Craig and Nikki, and and they're going there. You can't, you can't really fault them, right? I mean, how is that any different to me moving to Brazil to train? You know, I was like, man, if I want to do this, I've got to go train with the best, right? So if that's the case, you can't really fault them. If they've left, another common reason that they would leave is because maybe their current gym is actually just bad. You know, you see that a lot. There's a lot of, like any business, there's a lot of bad businesses out there, whether it's jiu-jitsu or a cafe or whatever. So maybe they left because their gym was already shit, you know, and that's their right. You know, gyms don't own their students. I've said this so many times, this whole like,
Creonchi thing,
and this just unwavering, unconditional loyalty for nothing. It's like, dude, like they don't owe you anything. You pay them a membership. They owe you, right? And most of the time you pay in advance. So they owe you.
So Gary Toden spoke about this concept a little while ago on his Instagram or on his Instagram story or something like that. And it was along the lines of, you know, talking about jiu-jitsu tattoos. Firstly, I want to get your opinion on jiu-jitsu tattoos. But secondly, if I'm remembering this correctly, and if I'm not, I'm sure I'm going to get corrected. If not on the podcast feed, definitely YouTube. But Gary was basically pushing back against that and saying he doesn't agree. He doesn't agree that it's a business. And he was saying something along the lines of, if you think jiu-jitsu is just a business transaction, then you know, you're in it for the wrong reasons. You're not seeing the lifestyle element. You're not seeing the value, how it, you know, is a part of your life. It's a brotherhood, and you know, you bleed together, you share together, etc. So, what do you think about that?
I mean, I agree with like what the point he's trying to get across, but at the same time, like, what a moron, you know? Like,
call out.
You know, I mean, it has to be. It's kind of like, I would be interested to see if it goes the other way, right? Like if it is this brotherhood and it is all that, like then why is money even involved, right? Oh, because I can't pay the rent by myself. Okay, cool. But are you going to let that student train for free when they can't afford to pay you? Like, does it go both ways? What about when they're struggling to buy formula for their son or something? Do they then get free membership? Or if it's this brotherhood, are you going to sling them some cash when they're struggling to pay their rental rent? You know, like
where do you draw the line?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Where do you draw
who's in the club and who's not? Is it only black belt? Yeah,
and
it becomes messy.
Like, yeah, man, it'd be different. Like, I'm not saying jiu-jitsu is a business, right? But I mean, if you're talking about the gym, dude, it's a commercial property. It's got bills. It's got all this stuff. Like, I mean, it is a business transaction, man. Yeah. I don't care how friendly you get with the person.
That doesn't mean that it can't be this, like, you know, tight-knit team. Like, it doesn't mean that it can't be this brotherhood or this sisterhood.
It's no different it's no different to, you know, the whole angle where people say, oh, if you're really friends with someone and they've started a business, pay for their business, like as in pay for their service. Don't ask for freebies. You know, that whole angle. It's like, 100%. Well, if you're really good friends with that person, you should be willing to support their business opposed to asking for handouts. You know, the same for me. Like if I had I've got a friend who trains with me, and man, he's more than happy when he needs a new gi to pay for it. He actually, you know, and this is a really good friend of mine, he doesn't even let me sell it to him at cost price, right? He's more than happy to pay for it because he knows that, you know, one, if I give it to him for free, that's literally me going like, okay, here's whatever the cost price is. Here's $100 or whatever, like out of my pocket. You know, as a small business, it's usually out of my pocket, right? Yeah. We're not talking like this is a $20 million business and it's like, oh man, just take it, right?
Yeah.
It's not. The jiu-jitsu gyms are usually small businesses. So yeah, like, I mean, I agree with Gary that there is a lot of camaraderie and all this stuff, but man, in terms of the physical brick and mortar, like it is a business transaction, bro. And if you treat your student like shit, they're more than welcome to stop paying you and go somewhere else. The example I always give is, you know, I don't care how good of a friend I would become with my accountant. If he started losing me money, I would fire him and get a new accountant, right? Like I don't care how tight of a brotherhood is, you know, yeah, we bleed together, we sweat together. Yeah, man. But like, yeah, does it go both ways? Are you going to be taking money out of your pocket? Like, is it just all, I think it's bullshit, right? It's
Yeah.
You get me riled up, man. It's
So that was the.
I think it's just.
Did you cover all three? Sorry, you covered you said there was 3 reasons to leave your gym to join B Team, and I derailed you.
Yeah, sorry. So one would be to be a competitor, so you've gone to
be a world champion.
2 would be that your gym
shit.
has treated you like shit, and brotherhood, man, that's just like taking all the responsibility off the instructor's shoulders, right? The third would be that people would leave because they're like fanboys, which I don't get. Like, I mean, look, it could go both ways, but I would see that as I wouldn't be super happy if my students left just because they were fanboys, because I believe I do treat my students really well, and I do have their best interests at heart, and all that. Like, whenever a student does leave me, I don't get upset at them. I look at myself and go, what did I do wrong to lose that student? And sometimes you didn't do anything wrong. They just didn't like your style. That happens, right? The same way if I own an Italian restaurant and people don't eat there, and I go, why? And they say, I don't like Italian food. Well, okay, well, I guess see you later. My business isn't for you. So that can happen. But if I did everything right, if I feel I did everything right and they left because they're just fanboys, I'd be a bit like, I'd be a bit down on it. But I think that's also me, because I just don't really, we spoke about that when we had the episode, Should You Meet Your Heroes or whatever.
Yeah, that's your approach,
Yeah, I just don't understand that whole, like, there's a famous person, I want a photo with them. Oh my God. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I know for a lot of people it does, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's just my opinion.
So the next question I had is actually a question from me, selfishly. Just slinking on in here. So my question is, I know that you spoke at length, I believe it was episode number 6. I believe it was titled something along the lines of...
I could bring it up, but
BJJ.
2 episodes in a row, I forgot my laptop.
All good, but it's like along the lines of BJJ black belt journey to Brazil. So when you went to Brazil to join the Alliance headquarters in São Paulo, and in your own words, your thought process at the time was you wanted to go to the Harvard of Jiu-Jitsu, because at the time it was considered one of the, if not the best gyms in the world. And that is exemplified in the fact that this the IBJJF Worlds just gone by, Alliance as a team won that with the most points, right? So they won.
I actually didn't follow it. I think you might be wrong. I think they got third.
No, sorry, the one before in gi.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah, my timeline's off because the no gi worlds were like literally last weekend.
Yeah,
right?
Which I believe Alliance got third, I think.
Right. Sorry, I was talking.
Anyway,
gi.
yes.
Well, we won fucking gi. Listen to me. We did it. We did it. I'm the best.
I didn't train back then, but we did it.
Yeah. So my question to you is, if you were in the same position as you were like 10 years ago now, say you're in my position now, but you had the same sort of thought process and you couldn't train at your own gym because it didn't exist, right? Yeah. So where would you go? If someone out there is listening to this and they're like, hey, you know what? I do want to be the best in the world in jiu-jitsu. Where would be, in your opinion, the Harvard of jiu-jitsu now? Trying to keep your Alliance bias out of it, but if it is Alliance, then go for it.
So obviously, if we ignore some logistics stuff to do with anywhere. Visas and stuff like that, I mean, I think it's hard to argue with the. I mean, I'm going to have to try ignore the power of influence that flow and social media has, right? Because that really would make people make their final decision. But I think obviously Alliance is still a possibility because it is still the gym that's winning the most world titles. I think I would look at either the headquarters in São Paulo, because even though Fabio doesn't teach, he rarely teaches now, right? Obviously Fabio's been doing it for decades, so he's not teaching twice a day every day anymore. But Michael Lange's still the head instructor there, who's like a 3-time world champion, I think. I would either go, there's still a great team, or there's another Alliance in Porto Alegre that's really good. If that's where I would go if I was going to Brazil. Okay. Right? I don't really see another massive Brazil team at the moment. Cicero Costa used to be really big, but most of those guys went to Unity in New York, right? If I was looking in the US, if I'm still sticking with Alliance, my personal two would either be Lepre or Marcelo Garcia. Not that Cabrinhas wouldn't be a good school, but I'm just personally more of a fan of
fanboy, maybe.
Yeah, of Marcelo and Lucas's style. But if we just move away from Alliance at the moment, I think the other really good options, Atos, the Atos headquarters, I saw
that one coming.
Despite my thoughts on the amount of acai that they eat and the amount
lots of acai,
the amount of Jesus, I think Andre Galvao is an incredibly good instructor. Those guys are, yes, they're massively jacked, but they're not just meatheads. They're super technical, and I think they do really great work. If you're more into the no-gi scene, man, it's hard to argue with whether you go train with like Craig or Gordon. I mean, obviously Atos is still producing, like look at the Hudalo brothers and, Galvao is a fully fledged no-gi guy in his own right.
Yeah, ADCC champion. Yep.
But then you still have the Alliance guys as well. Marcelo Garcia, his student Mateus Diniz won the last ADCC against Craig. It was a rather boring fight, but that happens sometimes when two dudes are so closely matched. So you got an ADCC champion there as well. So there are lots of options. I mean, I guess obviously I'm more connected to the Alliance side of things. So there's multiple Alliance gyms you could choose in the US. I kind of only see there being like a couple of options in Brazil. I think the Atos gym in San Diego would be awesome. Or you've got, the new B team or new
Mexican
Wave
ground
or whatever.
karate. Technically, they're not jiu-jitsu. They're Mexican ground karate. So you need to take that into account.
Yeah. They're the ones I would personally look at, and then if you're on board with all of them, well, then I guess it's just which gym style do you like the best? Because sometimes you don't realize until you train somewhere, you might not like their style, like the story I always tell is when Levi first started training in the US, he actually went and trained with Cabrinha under Alliance in California, but he just didn't like Cabrinha's style, the way he taught. And so he ended up in New York with Unity. Doesn't mean Cabrinha's a bad instructor. Cabrinha's produced a lot of high-level dudes, right? But it just wasn't his style. So I'm sitting here saying Atos, but I've never personally trained there. I've only from the videos I watch and all that sort of stuff. I might go train with Andre and not enjoy the way his classes run.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of like videos of his classes and obviously his instructionals, particularly the Stack Pass instructional and BJJ Fanatics. And I do vibe with his communication style, particularly during a class.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same with like the B team as well, right? I've trained with Craig, when we were lower belts, but I've never trained at his gym.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the way, at least from his instructionals, the way he articulates his techniques and whatnot, but I've never done one of his classes. I don't know what the vibe is like at the gym and all that. And I might not like it, So you also, we're ignoring the logistics. Let's imagine we could just fly around and try each gym out before making a decision. But there's so many good options, right?
And again, we're talking to a very
it's a small number of people
niche community
that are looking to that are willing to move overseas to
pursue jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Like I've again, I always talk about the comments I get on YouTube, but there's some interesting ones, and you kind of get an interesting cross section of the community. When you read through comments on jiu-jitsu specific videos. But I've had people comment on my videos, particularly around B team, saying things along the lines of, why would you move for jiu-jitsu? Or why would you move for a hobby? Or it's ridiculous to move for a hobby. And those are the exact people we're not talking to. If jiu-jitsu in your life, you do it twice per week and it is a hobby, then
you would never move.
Why would you move for it? It's insane. That's like moving to play cricket when you play it, once on a weekend or something, or play soccer.
But if it's what you want to do,
exactly.
It's like a chef moving to France because they want to be like French cuisine is their thing.
Yeah, and undergo an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Or it's like someone in Australia moving to Harvard or to wherever to pursue law or do a exchange program and pursue the best academies in the world. If jiu-jitsu, like it was for you, like you identified, this is what I want to do with my career. Therefore, you pursued that by going to, at the time, the Harvard of jiu-jitsu. So that makes sense. That is the if anything, it's the only thing that you should be doing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like that is what you should be doing. But again, we're talking to a very niche subset community. So for those out there,
If you're not willing to move overseas, then you can either come train with me, or if Sydney's too far away, go train with Lockie at
Yeah.
Absolute in Melbourne.
yeah, those are the two best
They're,
gyms in
they're the
Australia.
two in Australia. Yep.
Yep.
Me or Lockie. That's where you go.
Only those two. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know there is a good gym out of Tasmania.
Is there?
Yeah, there's a guy, I believe it's Tasmania. I hope I'm not butchering this. I think it's Tasmania. The guy, I can't believe I don't have it at the top of my mind. He has a very popular YouTube channel and mostly no-gi. It's like, I think it's Jiu Jitsu Down Under or something along those lines. Again, I'm going to get butchered for this, but I think he's in Tassie. Anyway.
There you go. There's one in Tassie too.
I've never even been to Tasmania.
Neither have I, bro.
Mm.
Is
Is it really Australia though?
I
I mean, our international listeners have tuned out now because they're like, what the fuck is Tasmania?
Yeah, man. Like, look, if it's not connected by a bridge, I say no.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, we got through a lot of really good questions this episode.
There were a few questions that were submitted that we missed.
Yeah.
As always, though, we'll, get to them in another episode, or
100%.
please send in more questions. As you know by now, this is a recurring segment. It's every 10 episodes, right? So far, it's tracking. Episode 10, 20, and now episode 30. Ask a Black Belt. So I'm sure episode 40 will be the next edition of it.
Yeah.
Keep sending the questions in.
And if you have a question you want us to answer on the show, feel free to submit that either on DMs on Instagram. But some of those we may miss. So if you want to guarantee that your question is considered for the show and we answer it, then the best place to do that is we have a form set up, a web form, like a Google Docs form, and you can access that through our link tree on our Instagram. So go to our Instagram, click the link in our bio, and there you'll be able to get access to that form. And our Instagram, for those that aren't in the know, is at beyondjujitsu_podcast.
Get on it, guys.
Thanks for listening. Until next time, see ya.
Peace.